All righty. Well, welcome to another Weatherford College Organizational Leadership Speaker Series. This series is designed to connect our students with accomplished executive leaders, innovators, and practitioners from across industries. Our goal is to bridge the gap between theory and practice by giving students direct access to real-world leadership experiences, decision-making frameworks, and career journeys. Through these conversations, we explore what leadership truly looks like in action, how leaders navigate complexity, build teams, drive results, and create impact within their organization and communities. For our organizational leadership students, this series serves as a living extension of the classroom, providing insight, inspiration, and practical tools that can be applied both now and in their future professional roles. Today, we are honored to have a leader who brings that real world perspective to our discussion. She is the founder, owner, and CEO of Ida May Home, a Fort Worth, Texas-based brand specializing in handcrafted, American-made quilts, textiles, apparel, and home goods. Founded in 2018, the company produces items locally in Texas. And I'm also extra excited because we both share that we are Baylor Bears. So very excited about having and introducing Miss Kristin Kiseljack. I hope I said that correctly.
You said it perfectly. Thank you. Well,
Absolutely.
it's great to be here. I appreciate this so much and appreciate the opportunity, and I'm excited to answer some questions and hopefully give a little bit of insight of the journey.
Absolutely. It is definitely our pleasure, and thank you again. Okay, let's jump right into it. So, as we always kind of start off, tell me about your professional journey and your
Yeah.
organization, key roles, pivotal decisions, including education and experiences outside your career that shaped where you are today.
Yes, of course. Well, I grew up in Fort Worth in Texas and then went to Baylor as you know, and I got a degree in accounting. And my dad had always said, if you can get a business degree in accounting, you could do anything. And at the time I thought, well, I don't know that I am able to graduate with an accounting degree. It's, not my specialty, but he was right. And it's interesting how that has really come into play in my professional journey. Even though I'm in merchandising and retail and design, it's helped me tremendously as a business owner. I actually, after graduating from Baylor, I moved to London and worked at Harrods department store. And that's really what got me the passion and drive to go into retail and merchandising and products, because that's where my focus was more of the design and the creativity. So when I moved back to the States, I joined Marshall Fields, which was part of Target Corporation in Minneapolis, and became a buyer. And for me, being a buyer was just such a good blend of the analytics as well as the creative side of things, because you have to look at your sales, you have to see, is it in the right store? And then you have to be able to analyze trends. And so I was a buyer at Marshall Fields, and then I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, where I worked for Steinmart as a buyer. And I was there for about 12 years, again, analyzing the trends, looking at the analytics, driving sales. And I started thinking, if I can do this for this company and drive these types of sales, how can that translate to my own company? What kind of business could I start or run to be able to capture driving those sales? And again, looking at the analytics and seeing what the trends are in the market, and to be able to do that for me. And so I had worked with this couple who sold me quilts. I'd worked with them since Marshall Field, so for probably about 15 years. And they had an import quilt company. And they started talking to me about joining their company, being the president of the company. They were based here in Texas, in Addison. And they said, would you be interested in this? Because we're looking to step back, we're looking to retire, and we'd really like for you to run this company. And I said, I appreciate that. However, I'm really at the stage where if I make a move from Steinmart, which I loved, I was very happy there, I want it to be running my own business. And so they said, well, we are looking to retire. So how about we talk about a buyout? And so that got me really interested. And so we talked for a good 2 years because I just wanted to make sure it was the correct move. And that's one thing is I think when you're making these big moves, it's okay to take time and think about it. I mean, I prayed about it, just really made sure because I had a family, I had young kids. And so, moving them and everything. But after 2 years of talks, I decided to go for it. And we worked out a buyout and I bought the assets of the company and moved my family to Texas. And so buying the assets really was primarily goodwill and then trademarks on artwork that they've had archived. And there was no type of physical assets that came with the sale because, it was all, again, it was all goodwill. Goodwill
Mhm.
is a very important thing because that's relationships with customers like Ross and Macy's and Home Goods that are very difficult to get into if you're just cold calling. And so those relationships were worth it. That was a big deal because I started, I came on board and then got to know all the buyers. Some of them I already knew from my buying career, but the fact that I had been a buyer was very important and I think helped with those relationships because my focus still is always on the customer, always on the buyer. What can I do to make your life easier? Because I know what that looks like from their side. And I know how important it is to hit margins and profitability and all those things. And so for me, coming into it, it wasn't just about driving sales, pushing product. It was about what do you need? What can we do to help you look good? And I think, again, that's been a big secret to success is really kind of getting in the customer's mind and understanding what that looks like. So I hired the president of our company, Rashanda, day one, and said we've worked together now. That was 2014, so for 12 years, I guess. And she's been with me and has been such, I mean, an asset to this business in terms of loyalty and vision and all the things. So that's the other thing I think is really important is to talk about the surrounding yourself with good people. I think that's a pivotal part of being successful in this business. And so we operated the import business. We trademarked the item name in 2018 because I knew I wanted to start our own brand, not just design brands for other companies. And again, so that's what we were doing was Macy's, Ross, all those guys. We would design quilts for them and then have them imported from China or India. And over those years, we would travel to China and India and think this, if they can do this, we can do this in the States. It would be so great to be able to control this whole process, the quality, how everything ends up and do that in the States. And, throughout the years, you have all these fluctuations like cotton prices and port strikes, et cetera. And that happened. And then, after when 2020 hit, it was just a really good time to start, manufacturing here. And
Mhm.
I think also that's, when you look at an organization structure, the same team that we had in place in 2014, for the most part, we have in place today. And everyone was able to pivot and shift roles. And so while we still had import going on, we were taking on the domestic manufacturing. So from like a logistics standpoint, how does that person shift from import logistics to domestic and
Mhm.
getting out web orders and that kind of a thing? And so I think again, it's just that the core team and the core team being able to pivot is what really made us into what we are today. Because it's one of those things you have to have you just have to have that team to allow you to be able to pivot and change and grow. And so again, that's where we are today. Is we are 90% manufacturing here domestic. We still have an import business where we actually anyone that we do like Hobby Lobby, for instance, we'll do quilts and shower curtains and those types of goods, and Hobby Lobby picks it up overseas, so they're FOB. But
Mhm.
we're out of the container shipping business, thankfully.
Well, in this first segment, so many valuable things that you brought out. Um, but on a personal note, you mentioned Harrods in London.
Yes,
That's one of my
yes,
bucket list things. I
yeah,
love perfumes, and I hear Harrods has some things you can't get anywhere else in the world. So we'll have to take
yes.
that offline. But but a lot of things in there. So I won't get caught up in all those great things. And I do have
Well,
to
and
go
you
ahead.
probably heard too, they've got $100 grapes. My daughter wants to go to get $100 grapes. And I said, let's not do that. But they do have
I did,
everything.
I did not know that.
Yes.
And in full transparency, I have been to the manufacturing location here in right on the Parker County, Tarrant County border, and just amazing, amazing to see operationally how this all happens. And even the big machine that you mentioned coming from Italy and how many
Yes.
quilts it allows you to do every day as opposed to what you could only do when you didn't have the big machine. So it's just very exciting to see kind of behind the curtains a lot of times of how things are run and how things get from design to actually on the shelves, like you say, the buying process, the
Yeah.
all of the negotiations to getting your product to the market. So, but I'm not going to jump down that rabbit hole. Okay, next question.
Yeah.
Describe a major challenge or crisis you faced as an executive. How did you approach decision making under pressure? Pressure. What trade-offs did you consider, and what did you learn?
That's a great question. And for me, it was definitely the COVID shutdowns in 2020.
Mm,
And, it was a rough time for a lot of businesses, particularly import businesses, because you had containers at port that were just stuck. You had containers that we had shipped to Belk, Macy's, Ross. So we had shipped the goods and then they just stopped paying. They said, we can't pay. We don't know what's going on.
mm,
And you still have paid your factories, your shipping companies, and so it was a very, tenuous time, a very stressful time because none of us knew what was going to happen.
mm,
Very uncertain. And that was a time it really would have been the easiest route to shut down because you're thinking, I don't know when this is going to end. And financially, this is again, a very uncertain time. I strategized a lot during that time. And so instead of shutting down, I thought, there's a lot of opportunity here at the same time. There's opportunity for new products, and there's an opportunity for a new way of doing business. And so it was a good 3, 4 months before our retailers really got back up and running. And I cut expenses. We qualified for a PPP loan, which meant that we could keep everybody on the team employed, which was great.
mhm,
And so that allowed me to worry less about the day to day of keeping my team together and more about what does the future look like and what can I do to ensure that we are never sitting here again. And
mm,
so I, thought about the fact that I'd always wanted to do manufacturing here. Where Shannon and like I said, talked about on the plane all the time. If we could not make another trip to China or India, we would be very happy. And again, just the fact that how do we do this so we're creating jobs here and supporting, our local economy, our state economy, what does that look like? How do we do that? And so I used those 3, 4 months to come up with a business plan. I had a wonderful banker, and that supported it and that
mm,
saw the vision. And that's a really big deal as well. Like I talk about surrounding yourself with the right team, surrounding yourself with the right, people outside of your team in terms of banking and, every step, attorneys, all of that, finding the right people and good people is so important to your success and sticking with those people. Again, the relationships, that's what I keep saying with your customers, with your team, with the outside, kind of third party support system is critical. You have to have those in order to be successful. And so the fact that that bank saw the potential and saw the future and saw the vision was so important because I mean, they gave us the loan to buy equipment, to buy a building, to hire folks to train for manufacturing in 2020 when everything was shut down and we
mm.
weren't being paid. And they said, you know what, we believe in this business. And that was huge, obviously. And so that allowed us to, buy the equipment, come up with a game plan. What does this process look like? And really, we were formulating a process from not knowing much except for our trips to, the factories overseas. And so we formulated as best we could. We bought every piece of wrong equipment you could buy initially. We bought the wrong printer, we bought the wrong quilter, we bought the wrong sewing machines, but it allowed us again to really understand the process. And we were able to sell those machines and then buy the correct equipment. So it took us longer than I anticipated. And that's another thing I think that We all want to start a new business and have it work overnight, but the reality is a lot of times that's not how it works. Even if you've got your business model and your process perfect day one, it takes some time to get some momentum, to, get your team in place, to train the right people, and to get that traction. And so that was really good for me too, to teach me, okay, it's okay that it's not taking off day one, and to stay the course and keep the vision and the goal in mind. And so, it took us a good 2 years to get our manufacturing up and running. Import business started up again, so we were able to keep that going, excuse me, while we perfected this process and while we hired manufacturing folks, because this industry was completely sent offshore, the textile industry, the
Mm.
manufacturing industry. And so it's very difficult to find anyone that can even sew or run a piece of equipment like we have. And so that's, I think, is an important thing as well, to know that these types of industries, these kind of trade industries, are picking up and the momentum is there. And so again, the challenge now is keeping up and growing with the business. But the initial challenge was how to stay in business. And so, I just learned, you keep the faith, you believe in yourself, you trust your gut, and you never give up. And that was, again, a really good lesson for me, was 2020. And a lot of times we look back on these things and you just think, wow, I can't believe we survived all that, like all of us. But
Right.
there are a lot of good things that came out of it. So
That's a great segue. Leading to our next question is, how do you anticipate and prepare for the future? Thinking about
yeah,
industry shifts, technology, workforce changes, what signals do you watch, and how do you align strategy and culture just to stay ahead?
well, that's a great question. And I think that workforce changes, and trends impact us greatly. And, talking with colleges and high schools with you, Mark, it's just such a great way to understand that. Like,
Mhm.
our conversation about the shifts in the workforce, and, where students are going, was really helpful for me. Again, talking to high schools, and, a lot of the high schools now are shifting their students to trade schools, and then colleges are training them to trade schools and that type of the industry, which is really, again, great for us, to see those shifts in the market and to hear that. We're also researching with industry experts in terms of equipment, and what are those techniques, how can we get new equipment that prevents us from having to hire more folks maybe to do that section, but we've got more over here. How does that shift the manufacturing process? And for instance, we've got our quilting tech came in and just said, there's a new quilter. We've got these huge industrial quilters that are probably 12 feet wide. He said
Mhm.
there's a new one on the market that looks amazing, and that say it's about 4 times as fast. We talked about the printer, being 4 times as fast, the one from Italy. It's a big investment, but so is the printer that's paid off. So you look at those kind of, cost benefit analysis. And then, a big way that I look too are at the trends in the marketplace, looking around at competitors. What are they doing? And one of the things we've noticed is that a lot of the competitors in the market center, we've got a showroom in Dallas, and a lot of the showrooms around us now are carrying bags just like ours. And they'll carry two styles because they're importing them, and they can't do the breadth of styles. And so one of the things I watched really closely is, what styles are they doing? What does the artwork look like? And we are always trying to pivot, and how can we make our product different? How can we differentiate ourselves? Which for us is made in the USA is a big one. And then number two is the fact that we can print, quilt, make anything here in a day. And
Mm.
so we can go to market with 100 different patterns, which our customers love. And the showroom across the way has two. So we really use our flexibility and design capabilities to our advantage, which has been great.
This has been amazing. I appreciate it. This is our last question.
Yeah.
What one piece of practical advice would you give a newly minted bachelor graduate in organizational leadership entering today's workforce?
I would say my number one piece of advice would be to surround yourself with people you can trust and who are better at their area of expertise than you are, because that allows you to delegate you could delegate their job to them instead of having or trying to do everything yourself. So
Mm.
I would say the more you can trust their team to take on their roles, I mean, the more it frees you up to excel at yours, which is the vision and the leadership and the management of that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this has been exciting, especially since I've been to your location and been able to see all of the different things and then to hear about the new equipment that comes along. I think always trying to chase technology and do things more efficiently um, always helps businesses. But then, sometimes you've spent quite a bit of money on the previous technology, so you have to kind of navigate that as well. But how can they find your items? Where are you located? What would you like to share with those watching about who Item A Home is and how they can get your? I know you have a nice store in downtown Aledo, Texas, but what else would you like to share with them?
Yeah, so you can find us online at www.itemahome.com, and we've got a great website there. Instagram is a great way to find us too, Item A Home, and then TikTok. And so we've got a new TikTok shop and presence there. So those are the three main ways. And then we also sell to local retailers like Teskey's, Mavericks, and Initially Yours, and so they can find them in boutiques as well.
Was I right when I heard when we were there that you're also at Bucky's?
Yes. Yeah. We do a proprietary line for Bucky's and Jug Gypsy. And then we just rolled out a collab this week with Justin Boots with Tony Lama. So that's exciting. And a couple in the pipeline that are TBD. So
Very nice, very nice.
yeah,
Well,
thank you.
again, thank you so much. It is our pleasure to be able to share this with our students and broadly because the information that you have is so meaningful to those that are looking to aspire to be entrepreneurs, to do it in a traditional way as well with going to organizations like you've worked for. So this is always great for our students to hear because it expands their knowledge of the world. And you having flown to China and been to all of these places, but now to bring that manufacturing home is very exciting. And again, we're grateful and we wish you the best of success.
Thank you, Mark. I sure appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
All right, so we have stopped recording.